From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. The voters have spoken. The 2018 midterm elections are over in Tennessee and across the nation. What did we learn from what the voters said, and what happens now? We have two of our best political analysts joining us on Inside Politics today to discuss what happened on Tuesday, Democrat Larry Woods and Republican Bill Phillips. Gentlemen, it was, as always, another very interesting night on Tuesday. What's your first take from both of you? What's the number one take you took out of looking over the returns? Bill?
Well, the spread between the winners and the losers in the two statewide surprised me a little bit. The governor-elect, I thought would be double-digit, but 20 points, that's more than I expected. And then on the Senate race, I really thought it was going to be a lot closer than it ended up being.
Larry, what are your thoughts?
I have to agree. My Democrats did not come as close as I thought they would. Certainly both Mr. Dean and Mr. Bresson knew it was an uphill struggle and climb all the way. And I think a month before the election, I think both Democratic candidates would have done better than they wound up actually on election day.
So the Republicans, particularly in the Senate race, were able to nationalize this race, particularly with Marsha Blackburn making it more on Donald Trump's issues, and in this state that goes a long way.
That's right. As you were saying to me when I first came in today, Pat, when Phil Bredesen announced, yes, I would have voted for Kavanaugh, that just started a decline in his campaign, whether it was because it hurt him with young voters who had been previously supporting him, or whatever the explanation. And I'm not saying that was the factor that caused the defeat, but it clearly started a downward spiral.
Bill, was that the turning point, and was it more Republicans coming back to the Republican Party and Marsha Blackburn and maybe independents too?
What I ran into is I talked to Republicans that were considering a Bredesen vote privately. You know, no one said it out loud too much. After that, they said, well, I just don't know about, Schumer.
And the
Schumer was an albatross that
and the whole connection of Bredesen to the Democratic leadership nationally, Larry, he got pounded about that on the air and in the two debates, and he never seemed to really effectively respond to it.
Well, he had an effective response, and he made the response. I'm not going to vote for Schumer. Problem is, he only said it once. He needed in that debate to say it 15 times, just like Marsha did. You know, the headline in the debate the next morning in the media is Schumer, Schumer, Schumer. It hurt, no question about it.
What's interesting, Marsha Blackburn, Bill, is the first woman to ever serve from Tennessee, a popular elected to the U.S. Senate. It appears, though, if the polls were right beforehand, that she got her support to put her over the top from men, not from women.
I think, yeah, that's correct. The women were, as we saw across the nation, the women were strong this time, and she was the benefit of that, but not as much as she could have been if she had had a little softer tone.
Late in the campaign, there was a lot about the Central American caravan coming up here. Did that play a role? Did that sort of continue Blackburn's momentum? Did that bring people to her? It seemed to work in some states. In other states, I don't think it worked as well.
I think it fired up her base. I don't think it changed anybody's mind in the election, but it did make her base eager to get out and vote for her every time she and Trump talked about it.
And Bill, firing up her base was the difference, because Phil Bredesen came out of Davidson County and Shelby County with a 200,000 vote majority. But when you go across the rest of the state, we found out the Trump voters that put Trump over the top here in 2016 had come out again, and that's why she won by 300,000 or 400,000 votes.
Yeah, that's correct. He did better in Knox County that you would have expected otherwise, but it wasn't enough. East Tennessee didn't come through for him like I think they were anticipating.
Right.
And so Marsha was effective in building that base and getting her vote out.
Larry, there were some indications in Knox County and Hamilton County that the Democrats got close. Both Carl Dean and Phil Bredesen did pretty well, but couldn't get quite over the top. Now, we're starting to see the Democratic Party become more the party of urban areas and the Republicans more the party of rural areas. But the Democrats did better in a lot of the suburbs this time.
Right.
They didn't do as well in Tennessee with that.
Meaning that the battleground is the suburbs. And my Democrats did better than they usually do, but weren't strong enough. And that really gets back to Trump in the way Marsha Blackburn successfully made this election about national issues and Trump's issues rather than about rural hospitals closing and the effects here at home.
Bredesen talked very little about health care in that regard. A lot of candidates across the nation did talk about that. He didn't. In fact, he probably got pounded more about that because of the book he wrote.
Well, every poll I saw, both here in Tennessee and across the country, said health care is the #1 issue in the election. And Phil Bredesen, unfortunately, wrote some truths in his book about health care that don't sound good in the media, and lost some Democratic support over the reforms he made to TennCare that effectively pushed more than 100,000 people off the TennCare rolls. So health care was not a great issue for him.
Bill Lee is going to be the first Republican governor to succeed a Republican governor. In the last 52 years, the Democrats and the Republicans had evenly split that seat between 26 years apiece. Isn't that the ultimate final sign that Tennessee is a completely Republican state?
Well, it's broken that chain of back and forth at the governor's office, and so it's going to be interesting to see if it's broken good or how long it'll be before we'll see another Democrat. Trump has solidified the Republicans in Tennessee, and it's now the Trump party.
We Democrats don't have a bench is one of our biggest problems. We don't have enough offices to create low-level elections that we can win and then move up the ladder. And therefore, yes, it is a Republican state, and my Democrats are going to have to take the long road back.
Well, Larry, I was going to ask you if Governor Phil Bredesen, who is considered to be the Democrats' dream candidate, if he can't win, who can?
Well,
nobody on the bench?
I think with a different strategy, he could have won. Now, that's easy to say when the election's over and we know the vote count, what the margin is. And that strategy would have been Beto O'Rourke. Of course, Beto O'Rourke lost also, but the difference is Phil Bredesen started with a sterling great reputation that everybody, well, that most people in Tennessee knew at the beginning of the race, whereas O'Rourke had to build his name recognition from scratch in Texas.
There were a lot of things different about the vote in Tennessee than nationally. I mean, obviously, this continued to be a very, our congressional delegation did not change at all. We're still 7-2 Republican, whilst nationally the Democrats are taking over in Congress. We have a lot more diversity, a lot more women coming into the new Congress, yet Tennessee goes back to all white males, all 9 of them. The 2 women that were there have left to go someplace else. But one thing that is different is that we had this rural areas where the Democrats got buried, and the only place they did well were in the 2 major cities. I mean, how do they reverse that coming up, Bill? What do they do?
Well, it's going to be interesting. Our delegation that's returning to Washington, some of them have never served in the minority, so that's going to be a little bit of an impact, and that may discourage some down the road, and that's an opening for the Democrats if we can have some open seats.
And as Trump cuts back on people's health care, he's going to cut birth control off the employer requirements. He's going to cut out the guarantee to cover pre-existing conditions. People are going to lose important parts of their health care in the next 2 years. That's obviously going to result in a backlash.
Let's take a break. Larry Woods is our guest. He's a Democratic strategist, along with Bill Phillips, Republican strategist. Back to continue our conversation about Tuesday's election after this break.